Teda Malian nama then video roda logic and critical thinking unit 2 basic concept of logic la ke video en amani chana lot logic ka chana gich ka chukon benefits logic ka ba chukon go po ata ke video man ki part 2 man banu ge ma chala argument ki medini jana long ray logic ka one minute our dear learners, the word argument may not be new word for to all of us. Chawan ni read chala argument. Don't you have word me jadid ka kondia for all of us encounter argument in our day-to-day experience. Ko kon argument ja kon ngane chiang. Re chiang ga dan. We read them in the books and newspaper. Kwen kon ga bong na kene newspaper. Hear them on the television la kon ga leng TV and formulate them when communicating with friends and associates. Kala kon argument la kon ga let me roi kon kana. If you look back at the above different definitions of logic and characteristics, you will certainly find one thing in common: argument. Chawa mi chi lono logic ti kon gui ke yu ka padwan mi chi ga gui di kel li jek la kel mi do jalo la no mo da argument. Moreover, we have said that of the various benefits of logic, identifying, analyzing, evaluating argument is the most important one. Chang nu chi kon lono logic ka lat chukon lon logic to one chukon galalo wa eno kuran argument kuran evaluate ke guiran why then din the long way logic. It follows that arguments the primary subject matter of logic. What is an argument then? The argument ijen kel din the long way logic. Kumi chukon ko argument ijen kel din the logic. Argument on lo don tan ko man right. Argument is a technical term and the chief concern of logic. Wa argument a technical term la mala jeda gui ke ga kajan kele dini de no re logic. Argument might have defined and described in many ways. Argument da kona lat ka dubdukur. When we define argument from logical point of view, we kon argument ka char logic ki ke ta gui logician je. It is a group of statements, or group of statements, one or more of which the premise are claimed to provide support for, and the reason to believe of one another the conclusion. So a Madrian don't know what habitual premise written. Premise don't carry to one to look work key to work conclusion. La argument area de la rana a char la rana mukuran la nero la char mona tijide ke ro tidilo te mutual premise ke mutual argument la premise ton ke area to kon ko top to ko gog doro to ko lo cheta mila ro china de ngar ke kuro ente area di ko la no lot ko china de ngar ke kuro la lond di ko la ko china de ngar kuro te toni kan chal premise cheta dong di we kure icha ga cha ke cha kwen ka no bol kure la ga ja ja bi ko but gwa dong mu kai ke ku no kure china de ngar ga la claim maguro la ja en gorno la no kure china de ngar ke du no ko bai nge ki ko bai lenga ga chi statement chi create te bu go ko la chit ke mechalar ne kura la ga ja ya budu godo la to ne chal ke premise du no magoro la then chal conclusion bana ko jelo long yo trauma. Okay, as is apparent from above definition, the term argument has very specific meaning in logic. It does not mean, for example, a mere verbal thoughts or as one might have from parents, spouse, or friends. Wa kata chukon gujan argument wa take a lot mi chunga de long ray logic chalo ne argument chalo ne gagal la ngang nom la kon ka ngak ka ban kon kan chia ma no kon wa chalo ni de ngang nom wa take a specific meaning ray logic. Let us make the features of definition in detail. Wa chana lot argument chana men bit be detail ki chana jede men bit long. First, kenyam argument is a group of statement. Argument amari ndong walen along ka chitkala rezalarne. That is the first requirement for a passage to be qualified as an argument is to combine two or more statements. Wa menyam mede passage ki mede riya daga dawo de galare ka argument o miche riya to tobro ki statement to bro wa wenyam miche ka matke. But what is a statement? A statement a statement is a declarative sentence that has a truth value of either true or false. Dio miche agui kangan miche agui ka met miche al proposition tu proposition ka met kana statement ka logic gomen kana kelam la proposition lo na de la true ki de la false la me de la to ki de la false la gwa ja ko statement a declarative sentence a sentence ki eriat melar dor la chi ko declare dor melar dor no ried man de way talk ki de way ka cheta de way katum te ki Ethiopia na manda mo da statement ko katum chet ki Ethiopia ke no chi katum te ki Ethiopia ne cha ka chala ka dumno statement gwa mane chawe ko chawe statement ni true ki false la re pa la katum te ki Ethiopia le kon la re mo statement so no manda belong da bella argument dumno mi ti jara ni chudu chwali na mane chu ko da la re Thok ki ekach so no mane chade lare statement ka dor me cha lare statement chade ji argument ko argument a group of statement chokona la nyam. That is statement is a sentence that has a truth value. Statement is a sentence mitigate truth value la de wa ka ki de wa to. Hence the truth and falsity are two possible values for a statement. Then chalarne to kana ka wa karo to ten re statement ka la me de la Thok ki me de la ka jen bu kon la statement ka jen bu kon la be logic be argument be no. A statement is typically a declarative sentence. Statement a declarative sentence a sentence malar do la ler nagar. In other words, statement is a type of sentence that could stand as a declarative sentence. A statement a sentence mede chong la declarative sentence ki malardo. Now look at the following example. Dr. Abiy Ahmed, the current Prime Minister of Ethiopia. Dr. Abiy Ahmed ijan kwari Ethiopia to be kwamata. No matter ko lare Thok ngene. Kono many Thok Dr. Abiy Ahmed, current Prime Minister of Ethiopia, no man Thok. Thok Bukonu is a statement. And now Bogwama Beach Makale is the capital city of Tigray region. Wamakale Eden Reg to Kumatin Reg Deed Ray Tigray region. Can a memo? The Merto. Go to Conalari Thoki Ki Ko Kat Mil Dormi Thoki a Kat Bukolari statement. The audience was how Ethiopia was colonized by Germany. Ethiopia Takon colonized Germany. No memo? The Merkach. Do no coach Conalari Thok. He coach Conalari a catch. No man bukoni choli a statement. So nimela statement kelu dela we ha kat statement kala arodin ya madam beka argument bekan kulu form ki beka riere gora no laran bekan kulu form. Chawo note go logician use proposition and statement interchangeably. Logician wa mutual proposition can statement use can interchangeably. la loy the movie statement ka loy the movie proposition la kan ka nang la ke. However, in a strict technical sense, proposition is a meaning or information content of statement. I don't know no ke jidelo no ke jidelo technically wa mutual proposition lot statement ka lot statement la lot statement what is statement ko la Abiy Ahmed is the Prime Minister of Ethiopia. La proposition Malud Abiy Ahmed is a Prime Minister of Ethiopia. In this chapter, the term statement is used to refer premise and conclusion. Waga chapter statement bana gujala loda na premise and conclusion. Which call argument much statement to goal. Ka statement ito da ka kareo mutual premise and mutual conclusion. Premise malwag na conclusion ma kwala lwag riet mutual premise ki ma ku dole ko ki riet go rana kele larana lar ko conclusion. However, there are sentences that are not statement and hints should be used to construct an argument. Do no chawa take a sentence to a statement. Chitketa gwamane chawa, would you close the window? La di warnyana madi man gagbe chitich. Can let us study together? Echana kwen kel proposal la geography echana manele Quran muy proposal la that is your Quran invite. Right on. Ichiben la exclamation. I suggest that you read the philosophy texts. Quran suggests Quran job elena manena. They go anodine manena. Can I give me your ID card now? Come near ID card what time? In fact, sentence of a group of words or phrases that enables us to express ideas or thoughts meaningfully. Our talk read it on Dakan kon Jagja Bukon Magur kon Bukon a lot a tell lot. However, unlike statements, Dungno Kuala sentence to con question, question, proposal, exclamation, suggestion, comment. None of the above sentence can be either true or false. What in the Talamed de la Re Thok, Italmed de la Re Kaj. Hence, none of them can be classified as a statement. Come de la Re Thok Kaj. Chukon Gade Cholam, Chukon Gade Chola statement. As a result, none of them can make up an argument. Come work, Chukon Gachola statement. Chagade Cholomu, Chagade Cholko argument, I'm at a statement to go. What all the argument go? The statement that make up an argument are divided into premise and conclusion. Kalada chalarne wa argument. And it is like a statement. La statement don't have a carry out mutual premise and a conclusion. That means the mere fact that a passage contains two or more statements cannot guarantee existence of an argument. Oh no, Lord, no, passage. Here, no, read one. Check a statement. Chede Lodo, Chede no the no, Chede no Kelly one word to argument. Go no, go or dog on another way. It wrote on to content. Premise can a conclusion law like the G argument condition. Hence, an argument is a group statement which contains at least one premise and one and only one conclusion. Argument the statement ki madrian la madrian tono tichuala premise ne they can kill awawanya. Do no conclusion ni chang atan kon ka conclusion kel ki go bor ka mo go ground or chan go no do ka kel like go ground or ke la conclusion ni chang ten kon ka conclusion kel. This definition makes it clear that an argument may contain more than one premise but only one conclusion. Ala mana nyoda argument. It take premise ne tong wan dong ra kel ro awen ham dong no walk la go gana kel ko premise no dial don te ko conclusion ko ko lo nyono go do ki lot no go do arguments always attempt to justify a claim. All argument ni chang la go do mi cha la argument la go do ti mu go do da la te chara to jen te chara to brani ki mi te mu go rano la ran then la chwal ka argument ko bi reason ko dugumun bi chular na mani te ni la te mu go la. The claim that the statement attempt to justify is known as conclusion of an argument. Wa magoro kono ku kono la lat ka conclusion, and the statement or that's supposed to justify the claim is known as premise or argument. Duno ko la riya to ku kono lok ko de kon ku to ko go dor ka ware to ne chal ka ngun chal ka premise. Therefore, premise is a statement that set forth the reason or evidence. Kono premise why jan moy kon evidence ki jan kam kon reason jan kam kon law which is given for accepting the conclusion of an argument. La rieton rieti kon mun aken bu go ko bi ko do kon rieti kon mun mi ci ka riet rom bu ko go ko bi ka lelo go do ko be la week dum no re ton me re rong ko dong de go long la the argument dan ba ba valid ki dong ba sound ki dong ba strong. Which is claimed to follow from the evidence. In other words, conclusion is a claim that argument is trying to establish. Then let's get a conclusion. Jariya de go ra kono de kono la. Do no premise ne? Kariya to work on ko de kon go do de kon kulne. La riya de go kono de kono la ki something we are trying to establish is placed on the conclusion part. So make sure you keep that like go be a cabinet la conclusion. Riya de go kono la kon la ko le go conclusion. Wa chana argument chana gaman latbe kia gwa mane cha kon mo chana la chada nam gane chero manam gwa cha all Ethiopians are African la Ethiopia dia ka African na mangu cha la premise na man Zionite is Ethiopian Zionite are in Ethiopia na my premise road therefore Zionite is African. Zionite African. Rodo gwa ta kon job some Africans are black. African tankian kaniri chol. Zalalem is an African. Zalalem are an African. Therefore Zalalem is black. Kono Zalalem aramachar. In both arguments, the first two statements are premise. Argument daro because they are claimed to provide evidence for the third statement, whereas the third statement is a conclusion because it is claimed to follow from the given evidence. I could China daro changun la riet nyam daro. All Ethiopians are Africans, Zionite is Ethiopian. Example wrote some Africans are black and Zalalem is an African. Warrior tone chalka mun chalke premise Korea tone kan Korea de diodian ki conclusion kan ko logono dumno ko la ria diodian ko mechalele Zionite is African kada mechalele Zalalem is black wari don ko mun ke gog doro te beko premise la te beko premise la ria de chagor therefore go men area de no go kono do la to conclusion indicators bana gudi on yam All argument may be placed in one of two forms: those in which the premise really do support the conclusion, and those in which they do not, even though they are claimed to. Wa argument di alde kon kata karya. La take argument it premise ne loken conclusion loken go door go talk de can argument it premise chicken conclusion chicken loke liude. Chitketa de kon we ke chana da rode. Chemenyam chawo all Ethiopians are African. Ethiopia dia ke African. La minyo no chianda miara in Ethiopia dia no dia na African. Chawo gwa Ethiona ito yung Ethiopian. Ethiona it me Ethiopian ka chawo Ethiopia dia ka African. No wonder you know Ethiona it is African. So na mene argument mene premise logo conclusion ko talk de kele la logo conclusion ko talk de kele. So argument man bukone tole a good argument ki well supported argument. Dungno gwa mene ka tiede roda talaro some Africans are black. Jawo tang African black. Mene dagin bidu. Mene jawo all kandian. Dungno roda gwa mene jawo tang African ke black. La tang na. Jawo Zalalam is African. Jawo Zalalam is African. Ka jawo tang African ke black. La Zalalam chỉ còn ngi dongda white ki dongda black. Dungno gwa mene jador go ke Zalalam is black. Ka kane jong no kon Zalalam e African ke black. So no mene nyu do premise kind of conclusion kind of look ka talk de kele. Ko ja kam no kon some information. Ki ja kam kon some data kind of ngun fully la mi cha bene no de kon cholang bad ki poorly supported argument. What do know chang argument a good ki a bad wa ngod bu kon ko chole argument du kon do bu kon chole ke good argument kan bad argument. And even if they have a true, they do not provide some reason to believe the conclusion is true, therefore it is bad argument, but it is still an argument. Argument me premise me log conclusion go to the kelo bu kon chole good argument. Me premise me conclusion che log ka talk the kelo bu kon chole bad argument. Wa bad argument cheng me chol kon bad argument chalo no easy argument. Argument do no argument metede me chirong along ki me de gonna chole bad no. But how can we distinguish premise from conclusion and vice versa? Okay, premise kana conclusion mi kon ko de kon ga daga de kon ngaje na me premise ki na me conclusion de. Despite the purpose of logic as a science that evaluates and analyzes argument is to develop methods and techniques that allow us to distinguish good argument from bad argument. Why chang logic good argument ki quick evaluate what take a lot of dong mo la good lo kon ko de kon roin de go na roin de check de kon kadak. Sometimes identifying a conclusion from the premise is very tough. Katangwan ta dong de kon premise kana conclusion da ka la bede la cha tang ni cha. Premise and conclusions are difficult to identify for a number of reasons. But premise kana conclusion bejo dong de kon ka da long ka reason to go ki ke loan to go. Even though all arguments are ideally presumed to be composed of premise and conclusion, in reality some argument may contain other sentence as element. Chang no malaya chat ka argument ne jan ke premise ke conclusion garodian wati ka argument tan kien tla riet kong tla da repten. Moreover, even though it is assumed for the sake of argument that all arguments are composed of premise and conclusion, identifying the conclusion from argument is very difficult. Wachang malaya ka argument ni jere ke premise and conclusion eno dong de kon conclusion kamrar katang kon beja. Uh, okay. Since it is impossible to analyze argument without identifying a conclusion from premise, we need techniques that can help us to identify premise from the conclusions and vice versa. Wa ko dong ti kon ngede mal bak wa goro de kon ben kamu goro de kon ben ka chap to dong de kon argument to dong de kon premise kana conclusion lokaka. The first technique that can be identified premise from conclusion and vice versa is looking at indicator word. Wa men ya madong de kon dag premise kan conclusion kan why mugwi kon ti chala indicator word la tim la chaba nam de kon argument kan premise da ka da o dong de kon mugwi de kon ti chala indicator word de kon mugwi ki ria to new kon we na many argument ki na many conclusion. Frequently, arguments contain certain indicator words that provide clues in identifying the premise and conclusion. Wa lamala bien o the argument ka bataka wana to know do na many premise ki na many conclusion. Ta tana conclusion indicator tana ke which. La conclusion indicator ki wana to know do a conclusion tem chale therefore la be wherefore accordingly provided that it must be that we may conclude entails that hence it shows that wins thus consequently we may infer it implies that as a result so it follows that la wentena nyot kana we maben kor read kana mana yongu a conclusion ki gogdor. Then in argument that contains any of the conclusion indicator, the statement that follows the indicator word can usually be identified as a conclusion. La read we ben core read to chukon galatin why ni chang aben conclusion. By the process of elimination, other statements in the argument can be identified as premise, but only based on their logical importance to the identified conclusion. Why ke elimination mi chukon go dore chukon je mo do jawo te che dot ton ko ngono e ke premise na ko goro bu kon didien bu kon go ko chukon lan premise ni chang cha agreement ni chang cha ten premise kana conclusion ten grodin te ke ria de kong de la ba chit ke te la cha lo comment ki ria de dong to dan to no conclusion tran de ken dom berana assume no to conclude that no ke premise nga bidien bu ko meti morum ga kana conclusion chete cha ngun go cha women are mammals la men wa ke la kan god ke la kan ga dalut Zanavich is a woman Zanavich shit therefore Zanavich is a mammal kono Zanavich a mammal. Based on the above, the conclusion argument is Zanavich is a mammal. La karuli kono ki conclusion indicator nyo de jano machalare Zanavich is a mammal iyo conclusion ki gogdor kode ko guraria de chwalamu guraria de chwala therefore conclusion indicator ki nyo de no mebe ben kora na money a conclusion. If an argument does not contain a conclusion indicator, it may contain a premise indicator. A time when the argument don't tell conclusion indicator. When we tell conclusion indicator, that a premise indicator. Ping one minute a premise indicator jagalatan go at mutual since as indicated by because owing to seeing that given that as for in that may be inferred from in as much as for the reason that la tapaya coordinator can actually premise indicator la nyu beno ekane mum riatene ekane ma ben koron kima be since gor kima be because gor kima be as gor no la ria de ben koron ni mu e premise La nyo do a premise. Theater can a chair you should avoid any form of cheating on exams. Go out to the quality exam. Go exams is punishable by the Senate legislation of the university. Go on, Michukwal, they do yen kongot. La no manyo do woman premise indicator on a because. La ka premise indicator la kan oriere ben kor yo a premise. So particularly cheating on exam is punishable by the Senate legislation of university. No money a premise. La kola method you should not avoid any form of cheating on exams. No money da conclusion. Wagata the premise indicator kel me gwa mo kono gitu. Ko la na mala confused. And then a child for this reason. This indicator is special in that it comes immediately after a premise. It comes before the conclusion. La majak premise indicator majak jawa bana gelo. Wa majak jawa bana gelo. Ola be korunga, la be kor premise ka, la be kor premise ka ba baniam conclusion ka. La ka ba baniam conclusion ka. La mi jini chi ga no rule gwa mi yo. Di wo dong mi jini chi ga no rule gwa mi yo. Di wo dong conclusion indicator, we know the conclusion indicator. A premise indicator. La jen la chunga dar ngwan. La quick charm the woman. The premise statement, but you bandar majalala for this reason. Well, la quick way to go, the conclusion but it. La conclusion but it. The statement that comes before for this reason is a premise. La maben quick trade. Maben quick charm. La mabukon ben. But for this reason, could have been one money trial premise indicator. Do no maben core on. Came Michokono for this reason. Quella mabukul ben core a conclusion. One should be careful not to confuse for this reason and for the reasons that why temagoro da koro dan tit kedabo chukon for this reason can for the reasons that chukon gade confuse. Sometimes a single indicator can be used to identify more than one premise. Katango no why indicator word ke da premise into one da let allow new the premise into one. Consider the following argument. One minute argument, 1 minute which. Sionite is a faithful wife. For Ethiopian women are faithful wives and Sionite an Ethiopian. Why Sionite? Check me molki, check me faithful, check me the net. Go man Ethiopia. Can man to the net. Sionite. Check Ethiopia. It's your night around Ethiopia. La guamene premise indicator majale for data. La for guamene we kel ke premise no dara. We kel ke matala Ethiopians are faithful wives can it is an Ethiopian. Katatono komune ke premise no. The process of elimination ko ikon premise you can the materialist it is a faithful wife. They call a conclusion. La gua medito long no gano it a premise indicator me de premise no to one me de ka wakalo ki da wakel ka premise no to one cheta for gua me to wakel ka premise no to chopro dung no conclusion indicator cha da ko conclusion to one good ko argument ni chang la tene muten la tene conclusion kel tene chang la no man goro bi adit. Sometimes you may an argument that contains no indicator at all. La ka tango na dey an argument me tal indicator one dey ne je. neither a conclusion indicator nor a premise indicator word. Wa chang a conclusion indicator ma premise indicator de chak telo dor mute. What when it occurs, the reader or listener must ask himself or herself such questions. Wa mi to go tel premise indicator ka argument ka tel conclusion indicator. Wa jira mo kwena ki jira mo lingon goro bro de ti ka ti understand. Kenyam what single statement is claimed to amplify to follow from the others. Wa ku la ri dia ja ngunu akele mi la kan ria gor lat kanu bro de ti den. Binyo wo bo nyogo what is arguer trying to prove? Karam gold or kiram lad waron ingula dia goro laron bro de ti nyogo what is the main point of passage? Main point ki magor ko di lat re passage yung bro de ti den la michi tienye ton mitro de ti de kati loy michi jak wana mar nyudo yung nyudo conclusion kake elimination michi conclusion michi jak biriye to kongdon buka assume ka premise dumno be jidien be gwe mo dokan conclusion ko te chichwal ko meno ngono tla be ka argument la chita chawo gwe de chahada mena chahad gwa mena chawo our country should increase the quality and quantity of its military. Wawe dan goro da kwak kana bom dei ke goro da re. One day ke kana bom da wa goro da re. Ethnic conflicts are recently intensified. Wa gagang dur ichikoro de reblong. Border conflicts are escalating. Gagang ne re border rep karodian. International terrorist activities are increasing. Wa rea bol nyungwe mon let kian rep karodian along. The main point of this argument is to show that countries should increase the size and quality of its military. La tati angaja no government tel indicator word ya. Jen mkweni bro take thing na ndo kwa. Eno area de mane ki passage to de mane ingula de agoro la. Michro de ti bijegan wo mala de agoro la agoro no lar no de kon bom deike kan wan deike de kon re jen goro lar ko reason ti jamunta ko premise and ke reason to look conclusion ko reason ti yamun gwa to wo ethnic conflicts are recently intensified gaga no do ri chikoro de border conflict boys or international escalating terrorist chikoro de la te dia de no kono jo kono kon lo ga na ria de peg deike de la jana lo ga as you can see, there is no indicator word. Watch it kami kono go jana tele indicator word yaten. La me chikono go mi de kono rel ke no. Kono chikono ngaten wo me goro lara no goro laro de bom de ke dire. La mi den chikono jigla goro lara. Nyo de no manda da conclusion. So munyo do da conclusion la to conclusion de kan premise de kono rel ka la ethnic conflicts are recently intensified. The other premise one, border conflicts are escalating. The premise two, international terrorist activities are increasing. The other premise three, thus countries should increase the quality and quantity of military. No matter the conclusion, la mi chukon rel ka chukon moike indicator well. Passage that contains arguments sometimes contain statements that are neither premise nor conclusion. La passage ne te ka argument tang na tiken ke riet dong chedia premise ki riet dong chedia conclusion. Cha la yenen odong de comment ngun de gata. Only statements that are actually intended to support the conclusion should be included in the list of premise. Riet dong de gog or de luck ki dong de riet ki riet dong de go glor de look what tone bukon kle long bukon kle la premise. If a statement has nothing to do with the conclusion, for example, it simply makes a passing comment, it should not be included within the context of argument. Dung no riet mitale me rumga kana go glor ka wa riet mon bipal lo chi premise lo bipal lo chi premise dong da comment dong da riet lar me comment me tobrane ba mi chirom kel kana conclusion wa riet mon bilelde bipal cheta gwa men cha kon mo chet cha wa socialized medicine is not recommended because it would result in the reduction of overall quality of medical care available to the average citizen. In addition, it might very well bankrupt the federal treasury. This is the whole sense against the socialized medicine in the nutshell. The conclusion in this argument, Michi Akwan about Allah Idun, Di Jagla Oyumu, a socialized medicine is not recommended. And two statements following the word because la statement are guru word because ke premise la mechaleli it would result in the reduction of overall quality of medical care available to the average citizen. Kana mechaleli it might very well bankrupt the federal treasury. The last statement makes only passing comment. Wa man jogan tobane chara bang la tel marum ga ganu kana conclusion that you can make in metal socialized medicine is not recommended. La me jog man tobane comment. It's just giving the passing argument about the argument itself and is therefore neither premise nor conclusion. Inference is another concept. In the narrower sense, it means that reasoning process expressed by the argument. What inference reasoning process ki ta dong de kon lodor ka lat ke inferential claim bukon video and broadly it refers to the argument itself. Mugede did what inference lona argument point kita dong de kon door proof ke. For the purpose of this course, we use the narrower sense term to inference and inferential link between premise and conclusion of argument. Ke course man ban use the narrower meaning of inference la load inference ba ka narrow la malono a process reasoning process expressed by argument la wa ijan kon gitan inferential link between the premise and conclusion then ban gitan la reasoning ta don lot premise kan conclusion de wa ijan ban gitan ka course Numada jam top video kamarada logic and critical thinking unit 2 basic concept of logic dia aja tata motor sha dokten gua chlo de tes ko chaling banarom ka video ndi hodien